Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, June 27, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And if you could click the like button, guys, that would be fantastic. All right, guys. Well, on my channel, I really like to inject my own sorts of takes on things, and you're going to hear some very original views on my channel. A lot of views that you're not going to hear anywhere else on anybody else's channel. Mainstream, alternative, it doesn't matter. I've looked into these things quite deeply, as I often do, and things don't make sense, and what they're saying doesn't seem to make sense to me. And what's also, what your eyes tell you. You can make certain determinations about these things. And, I studied engineering and architecture in school, industrial design, city planning, community planning, topographical design, landscape design, all of these things. I studied them in school. So, I have some formal training in those areas, okay? And then in my after school activities. I've also got a degree, a college degree in computer network operations. So, I have this sort of engineering degrees, and also I'm a pretty damn good journeyman carpenter. I worked for my brother-in-law, who's a master carpenter, for about 10 years. So I became a pretty damn good journeyman carpenter during that time. And, you have to know a few things. So about different materials, and just done many things in my life, including restoring vintage bicycles, on a professional level, and also customizing bicycles. And I've had hot rods and motorcycles and mini bikes and go-karts, and I've been working on motors my whole entire life in my free time. So I know quite a bit about, auto mechanics as well. So I know quite a few things. So in any case, I have to make a careful examination of some of these things and what mainstream says, because, I just don't think they're getting it right. And I'm going to tell you why. And you can see why if you look close enough and you add two and two together. But it's also about an academic, sort of an unknown guy who's not mentioned anywhere, and then, certainly not in a Wikipedia article, and that have to do with these sites that this fellow did. 40 years of his life um, examining and researching these, hard to get to, little known sites that we're only coming to know now. And so I don't see his name mentioned anywhere in any place. So there's something wrong here, and we'll see why in a moment. I'm going to try to get through this thing because it is a bit curious, and you're going to hear a bunch of different things. But at the same time, I was looking into LSATs, the site that they in the past few years did all the LiDAR imaging of, and taking a look at what was there, and not much, but some very interesting things that you can see. But basically the whole entire city there is unexcavated. 95% or 97% unexcavated. And it's pretty standard article here in Wikipedia on it. So they've already got all this supposed information on it, but meanwhile they hardly know what was there. They looked into some stuff, but my interest more in this particular video is with Rio Bec. And, it led me to look at Rio Bec, which I find very interesting right now. And there's some things here, some different things that we got to talk about. And we have to talk about this fellow that, they're more or less marginalizing or they're disappearing or whatever it is. Apparently, they didn't like his assessment, and he did, incredible deep research at these sites that we're going to find out in a minute. But it just so happened while I was looking at Rio Back that and El Sats that the Mystery History Channel came out with this video on that site in Guatemala. So it's about the city in Guatemala that they did the recent lidar imaging of, right, that you see here in the fellow's video. And he's just, what he says in this video more or less is that this was a gigantic city, and what they're taking as like other individual sites somewhere else or whatever is not so, is that the whole thing is a big gigantic city. So it's not separate sites, but one contiguous sort of city that that some of it you can't see very well, but it's there. It's just unexcavated and buried, and not on the scale of the major um, buildings, the major architecture. So in any case, that's what he says, and he's also one of these people who think that the Mayans stumbled across this stuff later on, and this is not, none of these things were built by the Mayans. And that's where I'm at right now with this, in that research, that part of the research vein, because things don't make sense. And maybe some of the things that don't make sense, this guy George Edwards came across, and maybe they don't like what his assessment of the site was. But let's look at this guy from the University of Texas, because I think more or less that this guy's turning out to be another like Frank C. Hibben from the University of New Mexico on Sandia Cave and Sandia Man and Galena Canyon, and all the other research that he did was so controversial that they still give him a sort of little respect. You can read about him. His books are in the library or whatever, some of them anyway. But, his real deep research is not. You have to read the papers and all that kind of stuff. And I have on my channel, we went into it with Galena Canyon. But this guy is turning out to be just like Frank C. Hibben, it seems, because it's just funny, when you go to look deeper into what this guy wrote or did or whatever, the University of Texas decided to omit it or block it, or they removed it. I don't know, but that's what happened. But you can still, this is part of their resource here, I believe. And shoot, just a minute, guys. So anyway, let me read this to you a little bit, okay, about this George F. and Geraldine Andrews, who was his wife, who accompanied him in 40 years of research. So beginning in the late 1950s, architect George F. Andrews and his wife, Geraldine, spent over 40 years visiting and studying the Yucatan and its Mayan culture and architecture. The collection includes many pages of descriptive data, architectural drawings, and photographs documenting the region, but no mention of this guy at all in any articles. And again, he's, as it says here, he was an architect. You see, he wasn't an archaeologist, he's not an anthropologist, so they could dismiss anything this guy says on those grounds. You see what I'm saying? So he had his own ideas about these things. But listen to what, the reams of material this guy produced on this stuff. And he wrote several books and papers and gave lectures on it and stuff. So 36 linear feet manuscript materials, 1,530 professional view camera images, nearly 6,000 35mm images, over 8,000 color transparencies, approximately 2,300 architectural drawings. So you think he did a little work on it? But yet, no mention of him anywhere. So anyway, he just tells about his life, his those degrees. He's a, pretty learned man, and he did this specialty study in the field of architecture. Of course, there's architectural history. Everything is incorporated in when you learn architectural on an Ivy League level. You're going to learn about all of these things, okay? So, in any case, here's all the work he did in all the years, and it says the scope and context of the collection, which is immense. It's just repeating what it said up top there, and it's all this stuff, research and papers, and just guy was everywhere. You can see, looking at all these supposed Mayan sites. I'm saying supposed. He believed they were Mayan, but he got some things wrong about these things too, I can say, okay, from my own perspective. Well, let's look at what he looked at, okay? Let's see what he said. And look, when I look at something, guys, look, here's the first thing in the search here, Wikipedia, all right? I've said this in comments in other videos. This is not the first place I go, guys. I try to find some scholarly articles about these things, and unfortunately, with all the Mesoamerican and South American sites, even North American sites, you got to go through all this travel magazine junk and tourism and whatever it is before you get to any sort of real meat or anything like that. So, this is what I ran into. This guy, George Andrews, worked from the University of Texas, and the current archaeology being done there right now. Here's the archaeological report. Okay, I read this whole thing here, and they're finding what I suspect happened just by looking at it is that these things have been repaired and modified, and areas of the constructions were omitted. Earlier periods seem, more precise, more precision work, than the later periods, which doesn't make any sense in any archaeology anywhere on the planet. So that doesn't make any sense. It's similar to that what happened in Egypt. So the implication here, if you're smart and you're with the program and you're on the ball, okay? This is what seems to have happened everywhere on this planet, okay? The Egyptians found the pyramids, then all their work from that point on seemed crude by comparison. The Incas in Peru, even in the North American Southwest, with the story with the people who really built all those structures, like Galena Canyon, the 500 towers there that nobody knows about for some reason. So they're trying to bury this guy, Andrews, and even in this is the new archaeology that's going on here, and it just doesn't say anything about this Andrews guy at all. It just shows some, in the past that they found it early, but then it was like forgotten about for 60 years. And so, it wasn't until the 70s that they actually started some archaeology there, but they didn't have the funding, so they couldn't complete it. So very few people went back, and then in the 2000s and 2007, they've actually did some work there, and they did some excavation at the plaza there, okay? And they were finding some very unusual things that don't make any sense. So here's part of the, plaza excavations they did there, okay? This is the most current archaeology. Just to give you an example, I'm not going to read the whole article, I can't. The plaza excavation uncovered a buried stairway 2.5 meters due east of the entry stairway into room C. Designated stairway 1, it was composed of 5 steps of cut limestone blocks rising to a small initial plaza that originally fronted the structure. Stairway 1 was covered when the plaza was enlarged, and a new stairway, Stairway 2, was constructed. Also consisting of 5 steps, Stairway 2 is constructed of rows of roughly shaped limestone slabs with limestone cobbles set between the risers. Okay, so first cut limestone blocks, then roughly shaped limestone slabs added on top of that. So who knows how many modifications, because both of those things were covered up. You see, so a north-south retaining wall composed of at least 2 large, roughly shaped rectangular limestone blocks flanked the stairway on the north and south side. So, roughly shaped ones, okay? From a second repair job or alteration job, who knows, okay? So, they found a few trinkets in the area. They're saying about what they found. They found almost nothing there that they would expect. Very little pottery and other stuff. It always seems that it was like swept clean of anything. Okay, so this is the current. Just to give you an example, the place, all of these places that you see that are attributed to the Rio Bec style, all right, have all been repaired and modified to a certain degree, several times, as a matter of fact. So, what they're attributing to the Maya is not the Maya. Okay, the originators, the people who originally built the structure in this finely dressed block with no mortar, okay? And then later on, with these tiny stone and mortar repairs and other things and elements that were added onto these structures, okay, afterward, all right? In an effort to reuse them, as their own ceremonial centers or whatever, but they were not the original. They came across these things, they repaired them, they modified them, they used them at a much later date. All right? And I think that's what this fellow, George Andrews, might have found. And this first thing you see, the monster mouth at Humagero here, all right? And even this black and white picture lacks enough contrast to really see it well. But this part of this structure was added afterwards, in my judgment, okay? This part was all collapsed, okay? And we heard reports from Marcos Vigado, and that I did a couple of articles of his on in these areas in Mexico here, where they find these separate blocks with these sort of elements in them laying around everywhere. Okay, and they don't know where they came from by, the major city in Mexico there. Okay, and all these other sites where they find these things laying around. So they were loose and laying around everywhere, and they reincorporated and they created this thing. This is all created afterwards. The lower part of this was the original part, and they even used some of the cut stone to create the doorway here for the monster mouth here, and these timbers in it are new. The whole opening here and the monster head and everything is a recreation. Okay, and all of the structures that are built that they attribute to Rio Bec style should have looked like the original Rio Bec building. Okay, this one here. All right, no monster mouths, right? Just fine construction. And even here on this side, all of these small stone and mortar elements in here are repairs that the Mayans did when they found these things to try to keep the integrity of the structure. But if it had, where did all the other stone go to? If the stone had either fell off or whatever, where did it go to? Or had it just eroded or something happened to it? But these are all repairs, and in some cases additions and everything else on these structures. But this is what all those monster mouth structures that they claim, but they're all later additions, in my opinion. Okay, this is not what George Andrews says, but who knows? I can't read his papers, so I don't know what he said. Can't get to him, I guess. I don't know, but let me read to you a little bit about this George Andrews guy and what he said. By all accounts, George Andrews was a highly energetic man, especially when he had a passion to pursue. This drive led him and Jerry to some sites that were quite literally off the beaten path. As a result, the Andrews documented sites that have been less studied than the major ones, like Tikal. For example, one of the Rio Bec towers actually was lost for about 60 years. The Andrews work is especially valuable considering the constant deterioration these architectural gems undergo due to natural causes as well as looting. Okay? So he's an architect and he's looking at it from his architect training point of view, not as an archaeologist or an anthropologist. All right? Understanding the Rio Bec groups can be a bit tricky for non-Mayanists. First of all, Rio Bec is used to describe both a regional style as well as a set of archaeological sites. The 21 sites called Rio Bec are geographically spread out in the Mexican state of Campeche, and efforts to distinguish one from another in scholarship have been less than successful. So it says view the Rio Bec gallery, and it has this hyperlink here, but when I click on it, all I get is this. All right, and they say go to this other link here, but that link says no file found either. So something wrong there. Why they're not showing us this. And here's some of the pictures of this phenomenal, just incredible thing here. And if you look closely at a lot of these pictures, all this small stonework and everything is not necessarily the interior, is a different style, but the Mayan style is this small stone and mortar, whereas all this other block is just finely dressed stone. And even the appearance of these structures and everything doesn't seem entirely, what would they consider the Mayan classic period or whatever. Just more finer construction than that. And you can see in a lot of these pictures what's going on here. It's mostly repairs, right? Fortunately, George's attention to architectural detail made him perfect for the job for using past scholars' descriptions to cross-reference the different names scholars have used to describe the same site. So there's a bit of confusion there, evidently. All right. The reports he compiled will begin to be available online starting in summer 2011. I don't think so, my friends. I think they're gone, unless you buy the books and everything, if you can find them. Again, George's architect eye allowed him to make distinctions others might have missed in determining relationships and chronologies of Maya buildings. Okay, so you get that, right? Relationships and chronologies. Maybe that's why he's not mentioned anywhere. To the concept that Rio Bec towers were inspired by Tikal's pyramid temples, George had this reply. Our own detailed comparison of the basic architectural and decorative features of the Tikal pyramid temples with the Rio Bec towers shows that this premise is not tenable, since the stairways, pyramids, temples, and roof combs of the Rio Bec examples are completely different from those at Tikal. Okay, so maybe they don't like that assessment. Using the minute details of the architecture to compile extensive charts, George made a substantial case for this and other theories he developed through his work. He had other theories. Not good when you're not an archaeologist or an anthropologist. Not good. However, explaining the significance of the checkerboard and cross patterns seen through the Rio Bec region was beyond his capacity. George suggests several ways interpreting them, but could not argue definitively for any of these ideas. So that's very interesting right there. Seems like this guy was a super smart guy, couldn't figure that out. All right. So, it's just a bunch of pictures here where you see it looks to me like a lot of this is repair work and that something went wrong with the initial structure being damaged somehow. All right, and you see like this stonework on top here is nothing like these finely dressed stones. Small stone here, finely cut block here, and you can see it more prominently elsewhere in other pictures. I'm just showing you some examples here, but this site had this really super fine architecture here of cut block architecture. All right, and it's not a monster mouth or anything like that. Okay, and that's what they attribute to these other sites, saying it was the same Mayans who did that. Here, look, here's just this super megalithic thing by the site. Doesn't seem to be construction of any particular thing, but just huge, hewn stone block, and it looks like even rounded fronts on these. Pretty amazing and inexplicable, as we know what the Mayan construction methods were in this tiny stone with mortar. Okay, so here's Hamagero, which was another site that they visited. Hamagero, Rio Bec style site located in Campeche, Mexico, has been minimally excavated due to difficult access. The quality of roads was a constant frustration for the Andrews, who traveled via Volkswagen vans, Beetles, Jeeps, small planes, and on foot, often with inexact directions from locals and their Mayanist friends. Upon finding a site, the potential for disappointment always loomed. Many of the buildings were in an advanced state of collapse, with interiors fallen in or filled with debris, too dangerous to perform research. Homogero 5 and 6 were such structures, yet Homogero 2 exhibits one of the most theatrical monster masks seen in Maya architecture, making it well worth the trip. One of George Andrews' monograms, Pyramids, Palaces, Monsters, and Masks, explores the significance of such sculptural work within the functionality of the architecture. Okay, so here's the problem with that, guys, and I have the problem with it, and here's what I'm saying here, okay? Rio Bec is a different thing, but Hormiguero, okay, which in this Wikipedia article, they don't show a picture for some reason, and I think there's reasons for that, okay? Hormiguero has this monster mask thing, but there's other elements of it that you don't see, like this, is a second monster mask here, and I'm going to tell you what went on here if the thing comes up. All right, so this thing right here is also a monster mask here, but I'm telling you right now that this whole front here was collapsed originally, and this was all rebuilt up here, okay, with different stone and everything like that, okay. The whole entrance was rebuilt later on. Okay, these timbers in there all later on, and some of the block that they used in here was from the facade elsewhere, this finely cut block, to create these things. And some of these other architectural elements were laying around, some they created themselves. But you can see, when you look closely at these things, it's a lot of fill in area, like here, for example, here, this is not this fine stonework. Okay, and these are all, cut blocks of stone in here. Okay, this is all repurposed stuff in here, and it shows even more in the front of this thing. Okay, which they don't even show in Wikipedia. But here's the monster mask thingy. Okay, and this whole lower part, this is all reconstruction in here. Okay, that's why none of this is here like this, but this is here because this is reconstruction here. It was damaged somehow, okay? And this whole upper part, okay, where these timbers are and everything, this whole upper part was built onto this thing later on. This was a fine building at one time, okay? So this was all done later on. You see all this in here, that's all rebuild, right? Rebuild towards the top. It was all collapsed at one time, and they rebuilt it to have these monster mouths. And they didn't do it only there, they did it at Chicana too. If this will come up. Okay. Same sort of monster mouth, but here it's more pronounced. You can see it, all right? This lower part here, from this part down and this part down, was the original structure, okay? This is all put on later. And it shows it's made from different stone, okay? Some of it